So I've definitely have had a lot of games to be playing lately. As I knew I would. I knew I probably wouldn't beat Red Dead Redemption 2 by the time Super Smash Bros. Came out, but I went ahead and bought the game anyway because I was a big fan of Red Dead Redemption 1. When the game first came out, it seemed pretty revolutionary. I felt like it blew Grand Theft Auto 4 out of the water and was one of the most impressive games I've ever seen to date. With probably one of the most likable protagonists of all time, John Marston. I think almost everyone would say he's in his third. He's in their top five, like, maybe not favorite protagonist, but likable protagonist, relatable protagonist. He's just a well written character. He's got this really unique voice actor who does a pretty good job with them. And seeing John Marston return in Red Dead Redemption 2 with the same voice, it was kind of a special thing. It really made me happy. And don't get me wrong, I really enjoy Arthur Morgan as well. That was a character that honestly started out kind of scruffy, but in time kind of became one of the coolest characters in the Red Dead Redemption lore that I really enjoyed and I'm really glad I got to play as. If I had to say who I liked more, it would definitely be a hard choice. Well, ultimately, I would still say probably John Marston, but I will say Arthur Morgan is a fantastic character. Kind of reminds me of Persona 4 and 5. Out of all the characters, I really like the Persona 4 characters so much, but the Persona 5 characters are just so well done and they do such a good job that it doesn't really matter about who's best. It's just kind of different. It's not the same game all over again. Arthur and Marston are very similar in that way. But I will say, what I loved about the original first Red Dead Redemption was you rode around on your horse. You did, at the beginning there was some slow missions that weren't that fun. But as someone who's beat the game like 3 times, it's probably the most fun, replayable Rockstar game there is. And some of the earlier missions are just great. The dialogue and the cutscenes are all just fantastic, and everything is done super well. The gunplay and all of that stuff, it's all done at a in a really great way. And it's still probably one of my favorite Rockstar games to date. I think Grand Theft Auto 5 stepped it up in a lot of ways by having 3-person gameplay and switching around between characters. This allowed for a lot more fun missions. The bank heist missions were actually a ton of fun. And because all 3 characters had different playstyles where they basically had Deadeye from Red Dead Redemption, there was a lot of fun to be had with that. And you could, there was definitely lots of fun with the missions, with variety. Sometimes you'd be an aircraft once you had Trevor unlocked, and all sorts of crazy fun stuff could happen. And sometimes the scenarios themselves would just be really crazy. Sometimes you'd be in the streets and like in a hood fighting gangs, and then later on you're fighting like private military people and all this crazy shit going on, and you're jumping out of helicopters and doing all sorts of insane shit. And I think one of my favorite missions was being at the morgue and breaking out when they think you're a dead body. That was a really fun mission. And I feel like Grand Theft Auto really pushed the envelope of fun gameplay missions, whereas Red Dead Redemption 2 did not live up to the expectations of the first Red Dead Redemption, nor did it live up to the expectations of Grand Theft Auto 5. And a lot of people talk shit on Grand Theft Auto 5 for being this, like, very narrow, story-driven game, but at least Grand Theft Auto 5 let you do what you wanted to do at certain points. Red Dead Redemption 2 was pure story it had this huge open world, but the story and everything was so disconnected from everything else going on in that world. To the point where they might as well have not even made an open world game. And to be completely frank, the missions in Red Dead Redemption do not warrant the 40-hour to 60-hour to 80-hour gameplay time that the game is, representing. It seems like some people think long equals good, because you don't want a game that you're gonna buy and then it's too short. Then you feel like you didn't get your money's worth. Well, when a game has online, you really don't need the campaign to be that long. But for Red Dead Redemption 2, gosh darn, the game, it took me forever to beat. And, I finally went back and played it after Smash, and after I got, I beat a lot of single player content in Smash Bros. And going back and finishing up, man, the final epilogue is as long as a fucking chapter. And I think that was a big mistake. I don't know what they were thinking with all that extra filler content at the very end. After the game kind of wrapped up in a kind of a nice way to completely break away from the main story. And the game did that at another point too, to where I was like, okay, I gotta be getting close to the end. And it just keeps going and going and going with these weird segments that are complete filler, complete and utter filler, and those segments take away a lot of your, ability to just enjoy the game as it is and explore that open world. The way the story is, and let's not mince words here. This game is story driven 100% first and gameplay driven second. I mean, in my honest opinion, I think gameplay takes the back seat to almost everything else about Red Dead Redemption. The graphics are more important than the gameplay, and forcing down these weird mechanics and gameplay mini games down our throats. People like that. There's just so many weird choices in this game, and then when you get the settlement and you can spend all this time enjoying the game as one character, and then by the end of the game it's like it's all for nothing anyway, and it's just kind of like, what's the point of any of this shit? There's no really, you can just play through the story and you'll get so much money that, literally I had like $5,000 on me at one point because I hadn't gone to the shop in a while, and I was like, oh, I guess I'll spend all my money. And I realized after buying like all the best guns and customizing all of them and buying completely new wardrobe and even backup clothes just for when I want to change into something, at the end of the day I had so much fucking, money. I still had like $3,000 left over, and I was like, oh my god, like I can't even get rid of this fucking money. So, and then I like just spruced up my entire camp, and I was just like, what am I supposed to do? And that's not, usually in games, it's like when you do a side mission, you get rewarded for doing side missions. But in Red Dead Redemption 2, there's really not much point to do any of that stuff. For the most part, you might as well just play the story. Again, comparing it to a game like Persona 5, where when you're not doing your main quest, you are definitely heavily rewarded for completing different side missions. And it's a big deal. So I don't know. I just don't know what they're thinking. And then when you get to the missions themselves, the missions that the game's so focused on, where if you want to complete the game, you have to do so many of these goddamn missions. Most of them are just riding on a horse and shooting things, and not in they're very limited in what they can do with the Old West. There's horses, and there's shooting. And the environment is pretty much the same the entire game. It's all just like hills. Eventually there's snow sometimes, but it's very rare. And you would think there would be more desert settings because it's an old western. But really, I feel like most of my shootouts were just on these big grassy hills. So it was pretty much totally boring and unsatisfying all the way through. While this game has a lot going on for it that makes it good, I can definitely say this game is, a 7 out of 10 or an 8 out of 10? But the problem is that almost all those points are awarded by the sheer wonderment of the experience. I feel like this game got some good reviews, got some 10 out of 10s from some critics who probably couldn't even beat the game by the time they needed to post a review. Or people who were maybe possibly getting some special benefits from Rockstar. Or maybe these journalist websites decided to put their biggest Rockstar fanboys on the case of reviewing Red Dead Redemption 2, and they were completely biased. It is astonishing to me that there are so many game critics who won't dock off points for a game where you just shoot running targets constantly. I'm very satisfied that Video Game Donkey at least made a review where he said by the end of the game, it's just, or actually he said like after like a certain chapter, everything just turns to a shooting gallery. Honestly, I felt that shooting gallery fatigue in Chapter 2. I was already bored of it. You compare it to a game like Zelda Breath of the Wild. Breath of the Wild is light on story and has a way more enjoyable experience. The gameplay lets you do basically whatever you want to do in whatever order you want to do it. You can just, and the tools it gives you to explore are a ton of fun. You don't just have horses, you also have a glider to fly around on. You have fast travel abilities to teleport, so that makes the game never get boring. Also, in Red Dead, you just point and shoot. Pointing and shooting in modern games is not fun in the slightest. Part of the reason why is because you just hold down L trigger and it does all the work for you. It aims at the bad guys for you. So the whole game is walking, holding down L trigger, and pressing right trigger sometimes to shoot. Snap aim is kind of necessary. Without snap aim, playing shooters on consoles would probably be a terrible experience. I know I used to play Halo and Time Splitters and other first-person shooters like 007 games that did not have snap aim before Call of Duty existed. The problem is that it's when you make a game that's really, really long, the satisfaction of shooting people to death isn't fun anymore. Ask a lot of people what their favorite thing to do is in Red Dead, and most of them will talk about the fact you can tie people up by throwing lassos over them, yanking them off their horses, and dragging them across on your horse, and then getting off, hog tying them, doing whatever you want with them, whether it be throwing them in the street, whether it be taking them to the police, or, whatever. Whatever you want to do, throwing them in a river and watching them drown if you're sadistic, or putting them in front of the train tracks and waiting for a train. You can do this insane shit, but the thing is, you can do it. It's your choice. Most people who like Red Dead more see the guns as something like as like a necessary part of the game. Like, yeah, the gun combat makes sense, but what's not fun is having a 60-hour game where like 50 of those 60 hours are spent covering behind rocks and shooting things, and then the other amount of time is spent riding on a horse, and you can't fast travel unless you're back at your camp. It's one of the worst systems I've ever seen. Now, they do this because they want you to ride the stagecoach and all that other stuff, but the way the maps and everything is set up is so counterintuitive to the player. It is not set up to be easy. It's set up to where you have to actually look at the map, know the location you need to go, look into which location you're going, and then going there. Constantly spending your money to fast travel, which isn't the worst thing because, again, they give you so much of it. For me personally, I cannot recommend this game to just about everyone. Can I recommend this game to fans of Red Dead Redemption 1? Sadly, it's not necessary at all for the enjoyment of this franchise. Red Dead Redemption is kind of fascinating because, unlike Grand Theft Auto, the worlds are very, very closely connected. Yes, you don't play as John Marston in Red Dead Redemption 2, but you do play as someone who kinda is like an older brother figure to him. You spend time with John Marston. You spend time with his wife, with his kid, characters that you might not have gotten to know as well in the first game, because you don't spend all your time with these characters in the first game. And having all the voice actors come back was fantastic. I have to give the game credit for the remarkable amount of voice lines recorded. I have to give the game credit for the amount of sheer content that is in the game. It is a huge, whopping amount of content that the majority of players might skip out on unless they really spend all their time searching around. I've seen lots of stuff that people showed me that I've never found just from exploring around the map. to me, a lot of that stuff sounds like a lot more fun than what we got with Red Dead Redemption 2. I really think that Rockstar might have been stuck in the past with this one. I think Red Dead Redemption 2 might have made a lot of people really happy if it came out like the year after Red Dead Redemption 1. Because this game feels dated as hell when I'm playing it. And I feel like today, it's like we're in the post Breath of the Wild world. Okay? That's the gaming landscape we're in. And in the post Breath of the Wild world, when you get a game like Mario Odyssey right after, it makes you pretty damn happy because there's a lot of inspiration from Zelda Breath of the Wild taken in account and added into Mario Odyssey. That inspiration leads to very good game design with, of this huge open world idea and giving the players freedom of control, freedom of movement, freedom to do mostly what they want to do. I really enjoy that about Zelda and Mario. Light story, heavier focus on gameplay. Now, when we have stuff like Red Dead Redemption 2, where, it's just as easy as an Uncharted game, where the game basically plays itself. So why you would think you would want a 90-hour-long game that just plays itself where you're watching a movie is beyond me. And I know some of you guys are saying, okay, if the game's too easy, then put it on hard mode. That doesn't make the game fun. The game on normal difficulty was already a perfectly acceptable challenge. Of course, granted, I didn't find myself dying that much unless I played like a complete idiot and didn't use the shoulder-high cover. But why was I not using shoulder-high cover? Because it wasn't fun. It was more fun to just run in guns blazing and shoot things, because I cannot sit behind the cover for any longer period of a time. And at the very, very end, there's a long shootout where there's just no cover at all. And if you're like me, you might not have stocked up on health items at this point. And yeah, I died a few times on that point of the game. And I was like, okay, well but this is stupid. Like, this is a dumb way to do the game. So I just abused my Deadeye and got through it. But it was stupid. And that's another thing. When you make these really long story-driven games, it feels stupid when you kill so many people. It gets to a point where it's like, okay, seriously? I can get shot like 10 times and still be alive. I've killed over 1,000 different people in this fucking country in the Old West. Shouldn't there be widows walking around everywhere with no men to be found? I mean, Jesus Christ, you kill so many fucking people in this game because the game is so long and all the missions are full of enemies. It's so crazy because you have this little family of a gang and you have to fight other gangs, and these other gangs always have like fucking hundreds of members, just a fucking loyal as fuck army willing to die for these random ass gangs. It gets stupid to a certain degree. Now, there's one part in the game where you're actually fighting military, and I'm not going to go any further than that and saying what the hell is going on in this scenario, and it might not be what you expect. But at that point in the game, at least that part makes sense while you're fighting a literal army of waves and waves of enemies. But not only are waves and waves of enemies bad for gameplay design and lazy, it's bad for storytelling because it just completely ruins all immersion possible for the game. So when people are trying to tell me that Red Dead Redemption 2 has one of the best stories this year, and if you want to say fine, it's not game of the year, it's at least got the best story this year, I strongly disagree. Even alone without all that other bullshit weighing the game down, the story is a little bit nonsense. Dutch is supposed to be a certain way, and I will look over that. Same with other characters like Micah. I think they're actually done pretty well. But for the most part, characters in the story aren't as compelling as people are making them out to be. And I think, again, people are just so invested in the wonderment of all the bonus things you can do in Red Dead Redemption 2. Hunting and skinning animals, and going to all these big cities, and going to theaters, and playing all these different games. And sometimes you can rob a store, and you can find secret things within the store, finding slaves, running around at night, finding clues for different things just in the environment. You can have fun just looking around the environment. You can find the KKK roaming around at night. You can hunt for very exotic and rare creatures. All of these things are really a lot of fun, and there's probably the best parts of the game. But when the worst part of your game is the story and the story missions, and that's how you unlock the most of the world map, to me, that's a huge issue. To me, that's a big, big problem. Then you make this huge map without a good means of fast travel, to where you have to ride the stagecoach everywhere. Oh my gosh. How about you make the game not fucking annoying, and then give us a better reason to use the stagecoach than by saying the game is just so fucking annoying that you need to use the stagecoach. So, yeah, at the end of the day... Oh, and let's not forget, the more simulation aspects to Red Dead Redemption 2 don't exactly do this game a huge amount of favors. The realism that is injected into every new Rockstar game, it's something that I've grown used to. I know there's going to be more realism in each new game, and for the most part, I'm fine with it. For the most part, it's actually kind of fun having all these simulation aspects. But in other ways, it really hurts the game. The reloading in this game, and the fact that you can only carry 2 weapons on you unless you get on your horse or whatever. What's the point? What's the point? Okay, putting every weapon you possibly own on your horse isn't any more realistic than carrying it on your body at all times. So what's really the point of limiting your entire weapon selection to your horse and not letting you have your weapons in your hands at all times? I don't understand that. Like, that boggles my mind greatly, why that's even a thing. Some of my friends have mentioned a glitch with the horse, where no matter what they do, the horse is always hungry. It's not really a glitch. Same with like how some people say there's a glitch where the bandana or the mask doesn't actually hide your identity. It's not a glitch either. The problem is the way the game is designed doesn't really make much sense. In a video game, if your horse was hungry, you would give it food and it wouldn't be hungry anymore. But in Red Dead, you need to actually not ride your horse, which means you're better off riding a different horse and owning at least 2 different horses, which is what I did. With my 2 different horses, I would simultaneously switch back and forth. When one was too hungry, I would let him stay back at my campsite, and I would switch to my other horse. Well, the game doesn't exactly tell you these things, at least not in a way that doesn't seem completely overwhelming to the casual gamer. And there's a lot of stuff like that. Like the mask system, I saw people explain how it actually works. It's just complicated. To the point where you might as well just deal with it. To the point where you're just going to get bounties, and that's how it's going to be. You can't stop it. Very frustrating that they use these kind of tools and systems, and it's not even very fun. I think the absolute worst part of the game is that after a long horse ride to the mission that I want to play, I'm so winded and done that I don't even want to play the mission after I beat it. I get to the point where I'm like, okay, I just spent like 35 minutes playing Red Dead Redemption 2. I did 1 minute, and I'm ready to play the next game. I don't want to play this game anymore. I'd rather play something else, or I'd rather get up and leave. I'd rather just not even be in my little room to play games. I'd rather just be somewhere else, or get on the computer, or eat, or call someone, go hang out, go hit up a bar or something, anything. Red Dead Redemption 2 is so boring that it makes me want to not play video games. That is bad. Compare that to a game like God of War or Spider-Man, where I found myself addicted, playing it nonstop for hours and hours on end. And I couldn't do it with Red Dead because traveling to a mission on a horse is not fun. Even when there's a conversation on screen, Jesus Christ, I don't care that much about the story. It's like so many boneheaded decisions with this game that really, really shocks me. I feel like people are playing a different game than I am when so many people say so much praise for Red Dead Redemption 2. It's like they're just trained to know it's supposed to be good. Red Dead Redemption 2 being a good game and living up to its prequel, it's like a meme or something, where it's like we can't say anything bad about Rockstar Games. Most people judged it as an amazing game the first day they played it. For me, personally, I knew it couldn't possibly live up to the hype of the first one, but considering how good Grand Theft Auto 5 was, I was at least hyped and excited for something really fun and really good. I didn't really get either with this one. I will say, this game is not a bad game. I want to stress that. But the fact of the matter is, it's not a 10 out of 10. It's not Game of the Year. For me, I don't even know if it's in my top 5 at this point. Very disappointed. One of the most disappointing sequels I've ever, had the pleasure of waiting on. And, when it comes to Rockstar Games, long-awaited sequels for them turn out to sometimes be the next evolution in gaming, that a breathtaking experience. Grand Theft Auto 5 for me is probably my favorite Rockstar game, and I felt like, but if Red Dead had that same treatment, it could be amazing. And I think with Red Dead Redemption 2, they advanced the game and evolved in all of the wrong ways, trying to make it more of a story-driven simulation game that took even more control out of the player's hands. And with a very lackluster story, with very lackluster story missions, it's really hard for me to recommend this game to everyone. But I can recommend it to people who are still okay shooting behind chest-high cover rocks like it's 2008 all over again. But for me personally, I could care less about 2008. I could care less about Gears of War. I could care less about shoulder-high cover in games. There's a reason why no one plays those kind of third-person shooters anymore. In fact, most people rather play a team battle game, or like Overwatch or Paladins, or they'd rather play a battle royale game like the new Call of Duty and like Fortnite and PUBG. Nobody wants to play those kind of games like Red Dead anymore. And it's sad that they couldn't evolve enough with the times and instead went in the wrong direction of really feeling primitive and feeling like, how is there no way to fast travel? How is there no way to skip the cutscene of your character riding your horse to the next location? Instead, you have the cinematic view where the horse kind of steers itself, but you still have to hold down X. And your screen is now basically an interactive screensaver. It's not fun. So many boneheaded decisions with this game. And there's a lot of good in the game still. A lot of good in the game still. That is held back so much. Which is why I can't even give this game an 8. I can only give it a 7. I can only say it's adequate, and at least it's not terrible, is all I can really say about this game. Some of you guys think I might be too harsh, but I gotta be honest when I say I really didn't enjoy this game that much. to the point where I would say I probably enjoyed Soul Calibur 6 more. And at that point, that means that Red Dead Redemption 2 is not even in my top 5 games of this year. That's pretty sad. That's pretty pathetic. A game of that quality, a game with that much money behind it. I will probably be doing my top 5 game of the year video soon, because we are getting too close to the end of the year to not make a game of the year video, and I deeply regret not getting one out by last year. So I will go ahead and do that, and for now I'll leave you guys with that, just with my final opinion that Red Dead is not as critically acclaimed as critics might make you think. Well, it is critically acclaimed, but they're wrong, is what I'm trying to say. It's not as, don't believe all the hype. You never should anyway. But I know everyone's already played it by now. But I just gotta say, are we really gonna keep pretending Rockstar makes only good games? There's no point. It's a cool game, and don't get me wrong, you shouldn't miss out on it, but I have so many issues with this game that I need to get out of there. I need Rockstar to not do something like this again, especially not with a sequel of this importance, and to a game that's the sequel to such a masterpiece that is the first Red Dead Redemption. So I'll end it here, and I'll see you guys later.